Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into an absolutely fascinating shift in how we process our daily choices and, more importantly, our mistakes. You know, if you've ever felt completely drained by just the simplest decisions, or if you constantly beat yourself up over getting things wrong, well, you are definitely not alone. So let's unpack the psychology behind how we make decisions and see how we can literally rewire our brains to use failure as a direct catalyst for boosting our intelligence. To kick things off, I want to start with a scenario I guarantee we have all lived through. Picture this, you just wrapped up a super demanding day at work. I mean, you've been solving complex problems, you're navigating tricky conversations, just managing everything like a total pro. But then, you get home, someone simply asks you what you want for dinner, and suddenly you just freeze. It feels like an absolutely impossible question. You are physically and mentally exhausted by the mere thought of picking between, say, pizza or tacos. Why does this happen? Seriously, why do these tiny end-of-the-day decisions feel so incredibly draining after you've spent the whole day doing high-level thinking? Well, the truth is, this isn't just you being indecisive or suddenly getting lazy. Your brain is literally being hijacked. What you're experiencing is a systemic hijacking of your mind by something called choice overload. See, throughout the day, the sheer volume of choices you're forced to make just chips away at your cognitive reserves. It completely tanks the psychological link between delayed gratification and the quality of your decisions. By the time dinner rolls around, your biological machinery is just running on fumes, and your ability to make rational, effortless choices is entirely compromised. Okay, let's dive into the exact mechanism here. The system in your brain responsible for all this heavy lifting is your executive function. This is essentially the brain system used for planning and reasoning. When you get slammed by choice overload, your executive function effectively breaks down. It just gets fatigued. And when this critical system is exhausted, you inevitably fall back into emotional reasoning instead of logical planning. That is exactly why the dinner question feels like trying to climb a mountain. Your executive function just has zero juice left to process the options. All right, moving into section 1, the focused struggle, reframing the sinking feeling. So have you ever felt that visceral, awful sinking feeling in your gut right after you realize you've made a massive mistake? Yeah, we all have. We're taught from a super young age that this feeling of failure is a sign of weakness. We're essentially conditioned to believe that making a wrong move proves we just don't have what it takes, which really just reinforces the societal myth that intelligence is a fixed, unchangeable trait. But psychology actually views this entirely differently. In reality, failure is the ultimate training tool for a high IQ. How you handle a wrong move is literally one of the clearest indicators of how your brain is wired for intelligence. Because your IQ is not fixed, it can absolutely increase when you train how your brain actually thinks. And this all comes down to neuroplasticity. This is your brain's amazing ability to change and physically build new neural connections during states of confusion or frustration. So when you're trying to tackle a really difficult task and you start feeling deeply confused or frustrated because you're messing up, you aren't failing. You have actually just entered a biological state known as the focused struggle. That frustrating confusion, it's a literal biological signal that your brain is upgrading itself. It is forging brand new pathways. There is a really crucial difference here between an ego in distress and a mind that's actually ready to learn. On one side, you have survival mode. This is when you instantly react with frustration, you lean heavily on emotional reasoning, and you act as if your intelligence is totally fixed. But on the flip side, we have reasoning mode. This state is all about a calm review of the situation, active pattern recognition, and cognitive flexibility. When you hit that state of focused struggle, your immediate reaction dictates whether you stay stuck in that defensive survival mode or if you level up into reasoning mode. Which brings us to section 2, error-based learning, the machine metaphor. Let's think about the most advanced artificial intelligence systems in the world for a second. An AI machine stays exactly the same until new data changes it, right? It needs raw data, and specifically, it needs feedback from wrong moves to optimize and get better. Well, the human mind operates in a remarkably similar way. If you look at it objectively, an untrained mind operates very differently than a trained mind. The untrained mind just ignores mistakes, it defends its ego at all costs, and it stays totally trapped in survival mode. But a high-functioning trained mind, it uses a wrong move as direct, emotionless feedback. It calmly reviews the error, actively looks for patterns in the noise, and updates its beliefs. Basically, the first time you fail, you struggle. But the second time, because your trained mind actually reviewed the data, you catch those warning signs way earlier and you react with far less hesitation. And this error-based learning leads directly to a really vital skill: context building.
Before making any decision, a trained mind uses its past failures as raw data to build a much clearer internal picture of the world. They try to understand the full situation. They look at what variables are connected. They identify exactly what's changing in real time, and they use all of that to predict what happens next. Think about it. Every single mistake you have ever made is just another piece of data for this process. This is exactly why highly intelligent people seem to think so much faster in chaotic situations. They've simply failed enough times to instantly recognize what actually matters and they can just completely ignore the rest. Now let's look at Section 3, the metacognition shift, mastering the ego. Understanding neuroplasticity and context building is awesome, but to actually turn your failures into an IQ boost, there is a massive roadblock you have to bypass, and that is your own ego. If your ego just cannot handle the sting of being wrong, the learning process completely shuts down. No way around it. Psychology calls the solution to this metacognition. Simply put, it's thinking about your thinking. It is literally the ultimate psychological tool to overcome emotional reasoning and protect your executive function. Instead of fiercely defending your ego when you mess up, metacognition lets you step outside of yourself. It streamlines your daily choices and vastly improves your decision-making quality, mostly because you're no longer just blindly reacting to your own emotional defensiveness. So how do we actually do this? It builds into a highly practical framework called the logic gap, which bridges the distance between making a mistake and gaining new intelligence. Step 1, actually experience that focus struggle. Let yourself feel the confusion. Step 2, pause. You have to actively control your ego's urge to jump right into survival mode. Do not let the frustration take over. Step 3, ask yourself the really hard questions. What was I assuming here? What if I am just completely wrong about this? And finally, step 4, update your beliefs through cognitive flexibility. Look, being willing to say I was wrong is not a weakness. It actually proves your mind is flexible enough to adapt and learn faster than anyone else in the room.
So remember this, failure isn't what damages you. Avoiding reflection is what keeps you stuck. All right, Section 4, your next challenge. Prove it. You know, knowledge without application is essentially useless. We've talked a lot about executive function, neuroplasticity, error-based learning, and metacognition. But now, it's time to turn this psychology into your greatest power. I'm actually going to ask you to do something pretty counterintuitive right now. When this explainer ends, close it. Don't go scrolling looking for another quick dopamine hit. Go out and intentionally do something difficult. Seek out a task where you might actually fail. Risk making a mistake. I really want you to prove to yourself that you can trigger your own neuroplasticity and handle that focused struggle without your ego forcing you into survival mode. Come out smarter on the other side. I will leave you with this final thought to carry with you today. When that next inevitable mistake happens, and trust me, it will happen, will you stay in survival mode, protecting your ego while your executive function completely drains away, or will you embrace the logic gap, utilize metacognition, and use your next mistake to literally upgrade your intelligence? The choice and the cognitive power that comes with it is entirely yours. Stay smart, stay curious, and keep learning.